I'm blessed to be creative, I guess. Life is busy, but I think along the way, it's all just been, trying to keep balance, being healthy, following my passions, my dreams. That really put me in a dark, dark hole. The beauty that came out of that was just, it was amazing because it changed my whole life, the way I perceive things, my look on abundance. So that changed a lot of things. And
oh my goodness. Okay, this is great. I have done a little bit of online research, even though I didn't have to, but this makes it sound a little bit more formal, a little more official. Daniel Jones, co-founder and creative director of WPN, a premium activewear brand that merges performance, comfort, and style. I can confirm these to be true after many years of rocking WPN wear. A lifelong advocate for fitness and personal growth, Dan channels his passion for wellness into every aspect of WPN and all other endeavors, including GOAT, as you can see if you're watching this on his shirt. Crafting products that empower individuals to feel confident, perform their best. Beyond Dan's role as creative leader, Dan is also known for being very down to earth. I love this nature about you. And your dedication to fostering connections, especially in the fitness community. You draw inspiration from your own fitness journey, your love of outdoors, as well as prioritizing sustainable practices and designs that align with both modern and mindful living. And whether you're collaborating with athletes or innovating new products, this man has the vision that continues to redefine activewear among many other things, while staying true to your core values of being authentic, being inclusive, and living with a purpose. Plus, this guy is you're just a flat out good time to be around in any setting. So, father of two from Perth, Australia. I would call you an entrepreneur, many different pursuits over the years, but what am I missing here? What am I missing in the bio of Dan Jones?
I don't know. Someone that just loves life and is good mates like yourself.
Yeah.
We touched on father. That's kind of like front and center right now. That's, you and I are both deep in the trenches of fatherhood.
Yes, we are. Father to two now, both of us.
Yeah, yeah. So it's busy. Life is busy.
True. I think to start this off, I think what we should do is you're down in Perth, Australia. I'm here, Washington, United States. I think what we should do is we should swap accents for the remainder of this podcast. So if you can give me your best American accent from here forth.
I don't know, man. Like every time I try and do an American accent, they are like, it's way too over the top. How was that?
That's good, man. I still remember your wedding when I was down there for your wedding. I still have the Uber video. That clip that kills me. That your American accent's getting pretty damn good, though, if I do say so myself.
Like someone told me that it's too over the top. So like you scale it back so it almost doesn't sound like you're doing an accent, and then it works better.
Yeah.
For Australians, you just need to drop the R on everything. Just there's no R's. It's just like
But
Uber.
there's more to it than that. There's certainly more to it than just dropping
Yeah.
R's. Yeah, because I mean that's
Yeah.
like Boston too. Southie Boston. Drop your eyes.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
there's something. Okay, I'm hyped to finally be connecting in this capacity. For one, we've had, I mean, years and years of catch ups, and this is one of those formats that I'm really excited because I get to sit in kind of the interviewer seat. Even though I know so many things about you, there's also a ton that I don't know and a ton that I know evolves over the years. So I'm excited to dive into that and to give you the lay of the land so you're not completely caught off guard.
Okay.
I'm looking down for those viewing. I have some notes to hopefully make this go way better than if I didn't have notes. So the goal here, I know there's some things that have been on your mind lately that you've been kind of consumed by. I want to touch on these things and unpack these a bit, but I have some questions that I'm hoping are going to end up serving specifically Aussies and Americans. However, if we do this right, then we're going to be able to unpack and set up kind of a formula where anybody from any nation will be able to apply this to themselves and be able to get a leg up on anybody else in their same culture or country, as well as internationally. So
All right. I
it
like
may
it.
sound a little complex, a little odd, but that's my goal. I have a sort of plan here, a method to the madness. So if we do this right, that's what you're going to end up with, listening through all the way through.
All right.
So first, let's just give the people some frame of who you are. And I think the best way that I can think of doing this is give us your life story, but not like, oh, it started here, and, the dreary. If you just sectioned, let's say 3 chapters, maybe 4 chapters of your life, like what's the first chapter? How did that evolve? Second, third, fourth, that sort of bit. What is the
Yeah.
evolution of Daniel Jones?
Well, as you said, from down under. So, life here in Perth is pretty cruisy. Grew up, great family, great friends, very outdoorsy kind of city. So, surfing, beach life, sports, that was me. Heavily into basketball, heavily into martial arts, which is where we met, how we met, which is amazing. And I think that kind of, I don't know, team sports and discipline from martial arts kind of pushed me in a direction where, I was confident enough to sort of take on big things in life. And I have a really creative, I'm blessed to be creative, I guess. So parents kind of guided me in a direction which I was looking to go anyway. They were very supportive with that. So went into graphic design, and that sort of led into other areas in my life where I sort of wanted to take it to the next level. I was hungry to do my own thing, be creative, but with my own business. And that's where my first clothing label came along. That was a trial and error type thing with friends. It was great. Um, Along the way, still training, still keeping healthy. That was business one, business two. We kind of jumped into weapon, which was like a 10-year run. We're still going strong. Um, and I think kind of through that process at the same time, I was traveling a lot in the early days, just like wanting to explore the world as we do. Us Australians, we just get out there, we see the world, we get experiences, meet a lot of new friends, networking and stuff like that. And then when I came back, I kind of just dug in, focused on the business. I met my wife now, Nellie, and we sort of built our family. And along the way, um, Goat came along. That's probably the newest venture, and we've just sort of been hustling hard to grow the businesses, keep our heads above water, live a balanced life, and grow a family as we have now. We've got a 3-year-old and a 4-month old. So life is busy, but I think along the way it's all just been, trying to keep balance, being healthy, follow my passions, my dreams, and have a good family life.
I love it.
That's
I love it.
yeah.
That's a great capture. And you said a couple things here that I think we should unpack a little bit. All of your sports and martial arts, the pursuit of these, they gave you this level of confidence to kind of get out and try stuff, right?
Yeah.
And
100.
in this, you've done a lot of entrepreneurial stuff. When I met you was when you were in that first venture, pursuing your first. I don't know if you want to say
Right.
the name of that brand.
Deluxe, yeah. Wow.
Deluxe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's crazy, man. That's how long we've known each other. It's
Right.
crazy.
That's right. So, and I remember you traveling a bunch and, us partying, downtown San Jose, around the Bay Area,
Yeah, yeah.
this when you'd be in town. And I'm curious though, you have this entrepreneur in you, like built in from I mean, well over a decade ago from when we first met, and you've never given up. And I've been present when you had some very hard down times, like
Yeah.
everything is seemingly going against you. But you have, prior to all of that, you have these sports and the martial arts and everything that built up this level of confidence. And then you have it chopped down in the business world, in a sense, with something that you're pursuing and you think, oh, this is going to be good. I know we'll be able to pull this off and make this into something, all these things. So, my question is, how many in your adult life, how many big failures have you had, would you say, that you can think of right off the bat? And what do you think is really fueling your ability to keep on pushing through those very questionable, dark, I have no idea what's going to end up like on the other side of this times? Like, what is that thing that's worked for you?
Oh man. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't call any of them failures. Like everything, I honestly can't think that there's been hard times. Like obviously, I think I look back to probably the time in my life where I was the most shook up. There's two times. One when my parents split up, that kind of threw me massively. And then, I was engaged to a girl. We were together for many, many years. When that ended, kind of pulled the rug from under me. That really put me in a dark, dark hole. But the beauty that came out of that was just, it was amazing because it just changed my whole life, the way I perceive things, my look on abundance. So that changed a lot of things. And I think through the course of running Weapon for the last 10 odd years, like the the pitfalls and the mountains that we've climbed, like all of those little failures, I think that sort of like doing this, as any business owner would know, entrepreneur would know, it's just a constant roller coaster. So you're going with the ebbs and flows. And I think every little knock you take, is just a learning. I recall there was a period where Nellie and I were looking to buy a house. We wanted to grow the family. We wanted to get our own place. She was really keen to do that, and being a male, wanting to provide, I was like, yes, let's do that. I want to do that for you. I want to help us grow this house. And the bank, my accountant turned around and said, Dan, there's no way in hell you're getting a loan. You have two businesses. One of was my freelance design business. For over a decade, I've made peanuts, you can call it, um, because that was just a way of making a little extra cash so that you could feed ourselves and then focus on Weapon. And then Weapon for so many years was at a loss, was in negative. He's like, you guys have this much debt in the business. You're not even profitable. You don't make a lot of money. They're just not even gonna look at you. So you can forget about it. And that, like, my heart sunk because he was like, mate, you're in over $100,000 of debt. You you got no, there's no chance. So like, and for me to have to explain that to Nelly, like it just broke me. It was so, so painful. So that was really hard. But those, again, like ebbs and flows, like we figured it out. It actually worked out to be a blessing, a massive blessing, in fact. So, and in terms of like, I guess how I get the will to keep going, I have no idea. But I honestly think it probably mostly has to do with, um, maybe my DNA, the way, from my parents, the way they are. and also the environment I'm in. I'm definitely in an environment that helps me to feel safe in following my dreams. And look, I live in Australia, so we're already super, super blessed. You know, we have opportunity
Mhm.
and we can follow our dreams. Like, yes, you may not be making tons of money and you might not be living this exuberant life, driving Range Rovers or whatever. But you can do it. If you want to do it, you can do it. You know what I mean? Whereas some people, some countries, the opportunity, the environment it makes it really hard. So
Yeah.
I think environment, my parents, the way, my DNA, my makeup, has made for that who I am and the drive that I have to pursue.
How old were
Yeah.
you when your parents split?
I was a bit older. I was 20, I think I was 21.
Got it.
So I understood the concept. It wasn't, yeah, it wasn't too hard in the sense of like, like, what is this? What's happening? I don't
Mhm.
understand. It was more so I didn't understand the situation between them two
Yeah.
until my mum sort of explained at a later date. Um, and you know, my dad, like, he's just such a loving, kind,
Yeah.
good person. And so I was like, what do you mean you're leaving dad? Like, this doesn't make sense. He's so good to you. He's so good to us. He's just the greatest person, you know. And like, he's my role model. He's like my best friend. So it really hurt, and I was really angry for a long time.
Yeah.
Until, I spoke to my mother about it, and we got to the bottom of it, and like, she wasn't happy for a long, long time, and it was nothing to do with him. And in fact, they're better friends now than when they were married. They're great friends. In fact,
Yeah.
they're coming over today to take Jasper out together. Like, that's what they do now. They hang out, and so it's amazing, and it's become such a beautiful thing. But at the time, it was really, really hard to deal with.
Got you. Definitely. How did I'm very curious because you mentioned like my DNA, as part of this makeup that's allowed me to take on this crazy experience one after another where everything feels like it's stacked against me and still keep pushing. And I love your dad. Yes, you're absolutely right. I know him, and he is a legend, that man. Just like I love you and your spirit and everything like this, but your dad is just a different level of a legend. This guy.
I know, right? This is what kills me because, like, people are like my mates, they're all like, "Yeah, man, you're cool. That your dad is another level of cool." Like, have you seen the way he dances? Like, his hips are like not even joined to his body. He's like,
Dude, that
oh
is a
man,
spirit, man. That your dad is a legend. Your dad's the kind of guy where like we'll call up, hey Danny, are you at home? Cool, 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 cool. Is your dad home? All right, cool.
yeah,
I'm gonna come hang out then.
I'll be over.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But if you're gonna be out, I'll still come over.
Yeah, I'll come over and just hang with your pops. And so,
Yeah.
oh, I love it. Okay, other question I have is when you were north of 100K or around 100K in debt with the businesses and all this stuff, and you were like, Nellie's like, hey, I want to get a house and all these things, and the pressures of you're a man, you're supposed to provide, you're supposed to protect all these things. Did she know before that talk where you're like, hey, like my banker says this isn't happening? Did she know the state in terms of numbers with the total bank account situation and all that stuff at that time?
Nah, nah, nah. And to be honest, like, I don't even know at the time I had sort of disclosed the total figure and sort of where we were. I just didn't want to stress her out because some people are caught out, can manage, stress and the ups and downs of business. Others are not built for this kind of thing. She's definitely not built for entrepreneurial, like,
Yeah.
just running a business. And I love her. And she's so perfect in so many ways, but like, in terms of like managing that, and I guess compartmentalizing things, and knowing that it's going to be okay. Like there's this weird thing in me where I'm just like, eh, it's going to work itself out. Like I just don't. And she sometimes says, you're just your head's in the clouds, or like
Yeah.
she's like, you don't stress. I mean, I do stress about things, but like ultimately, I know it's going to work itself out. So I sort of just I let her know where we're at, and look, I'm not going to be able to get a loan, but we can still figure this out. And we did. But I just didn't go into like, the world's ending, we're here. Because now, I think 5 years later, we're completely out of debt in terms of the business, completely out of debt. We're profitable. Like it's completely different story. So, if I just let the world implode and go, well, we're fucked, file for bankruptcy, then it would have been a completely different story. But you just have to believe that it's going to work itself out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Delusional, I think is what they call that.
Yes, delusional. She says that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Delusional. Man, isn't it? I feel you with this too. Uh, isn't it weird how there is some level of delusion that we live in where I think of this as it's not very different from like people have faith, right? There's fear of the future and faith of the future. And both of those rely on you believing something that you don't really have certainty around.
Yeah.
And the difference is kind of like your experience now and how confident you can maintain to be able to keep fighting through, to keep waking up and keep looking at the bank account and keep knowing that I'm just going to keep showing up and doing the thing that I think will ultimately end up on the good side of debt and success and everything like that in the future. Who knows what time, but we don't ever really have confirmation that what we're doing every day is going to get us there. We just have to get up and keep going after it and keep going after it,
Yeah.
and keep making the moves that we think are the best things for our goals and our business goals and all that. But we don't really have the instant feedback or even like remotely closely delayed feedback in business. You just have to keep going. And then eventually one day you look up and you're like, we're profitable. We're out of debt.
Yeah.
Like all
Yeah.
of these things, there is some level where a lot of people just can't stomach that. And yeah, I think if I've been called, whether it's delusional or whatever, I don't really know what different names I've been called over the years, but I have always been the most optimistic dude in the room because it's like
Yeah.
somebody else has done it. Why can't we? Like you should be able to
Yeah.
do this. You just have to figure it out. And if you're willing to keep committed to this, you'll figure it out. It's the ones that give up that you lose, right?
Yeah. Oh,
Even after you
100%.
mentioned bankruptcy, it's like plenty of people have filed bankruptcy several times over and then made it out and made it huge, like 10x, 100x any level of success before that completely shadowed any failures along the way. But those failures have lessons built in, like you said earlier.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I think there's a few things there. Like for me, like you said, faith. Like I'm not um massive into faith, but I believe in something else, So call it the universe's plan. I believe there is something
Yeah.
guiding us and holding us and supporting us through this journey called life. So I truly believe in that, and I truly believe that it works itself out, and these things happen for a reason, and blah blah blah. So in that, I'm kind of confident that almost no matter what I do, it was meant to happen, or whatever. So I think having that faith in whatever it is, whether it's your religion or the universe, um, is a big thing. Because if you don't have it, then you're just going to be scared to do anything. And then also, like, yeah, some people definitely have a stomach for it and some people don't.
Yeah.
Um, I Yeah, I kind of started early. So, I mean, in fact, not really early. I think I was kind of mid-20s when I started doing my own business and stuff. Some kids are doing it when they're 18. It's incredible. But like that to me is like the new way of educating because all the school systems are not really set up for this digital age, right? They're set up for industrial age where you would go in, you do labor, and you get paid for your time.
That's right.
Yeah, and it doesn't exist anymore. Well, it's kind of phasing out. And so it's like doing online courses or just starting a business and trying something and failing and learning along the way. And that is a reason I believe that we're so successful with GOAT is because that 10 years of struggle and just beating my head against a wall, trying to figure out why this doesn't work, how to make it work, then making it work, and then and living through that, trying to, grow a family, sort of was the learning and the degree so that, I can graduate and then go, is the thing. And that's why you said like so many people who had failed or even filed for bankruptcy several times over then became really successful because it's all just learning until, okay, the right thing presents itself at the right time. And if you stop, it might not be the thing you started with, like in terms of weapon, like, like it may not be where I had hoped it would be, but then it would never have, like given me that opportunity or I guess the feel to have the confidence to try go,
Yeah.
and see how that goes. And then boom, like something like this blows up and then you're like, oh, okay, cool. Like it's not always the thing you originally think you're going to do. But if I had stopped and given up, probably this opportunity for, with Goat would never have existed. So
Yeah.
I think you just got to keep
And
going.
would you say GOAT is your most extreme level of success business wise, pursuit wise?
Yeah, 100%. Like trumps everything, hands down,
Okay.
in all different facets.
For those listening and not watching this, GOAT is Dan's latest company, which is the greatest of all tapes, GOAT, which you could see displayed on Dan's shirt. And I have a video on YouTube, on my YouTube channel. You could search Dynamic Daddy Anthony Thomas on YouTube. And I did a full, honest review of these nose strips. There's nose tape, mouth tape. You probably have some other stuff going on. And
Yeah.
in
Okay.
my honest review video, I did, workouts, I played golf and so on. I first time wearing nose tape, and Dan roasted me as well as many other people for putting it on crooked. So this is going to be my redemption time. I've got I've got a little strip here and
There
I
you
am
go.
going to redeem myself. Dan, will you walk us through this real quick? And I want to
Okay.
apply this for the remainder of this chat, but I want to do
Okay.
this
Do it
correctly.
right.
Because in my
Okay.
video, in the hey, I tried nose tape, so you don't have to. And the one thing I told you is I'll give this a real go and a stress test, but I'm not going to BS it. That's one rule I have with any review. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh, Anthony would be cool to reach out to for this product review, my one rule is I'm not selling out. You're not going to put a dollar amount on like, hey, we want you to just kind of say this stuff. I'm just going to have a very honest review. So that was my rule with Dan as well. Even though I love the guy and we're friends, we've been friends for years. I'm like, look, I'm keeping it real with you. That's my one rule. So you'll see that in the review video. But one of the things is that I put it on a little incorrectly. So Dan, walk us through this right now so I can do this
All right.
correctly.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
So, like I say to everyone, it starts with the face. You gotta start with a clean face, clean nose, no oils, no makeup, no moisturizer, sweat. So clean up that schnoz.
yeah,
Make
I got a
sure.
little This is a soft cloth for cleaning camera lenses, but it is going to double.
Perfect.
Yeah, clean up the nose, get the oils off.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah,
now I
that's right.
feel like I'm good to go.
Okay. So you're good to go. You also do not want to touch the adhesive. So there's a split in the back of the tape. And basically I kind of just like break it open and you'll see, yeah. And then basically you put your thumb and your index finger on this on the tape, yeah, on the backing. Exactly. That's it. And then you're gonna want to line it up, right? And you on your nose, but you're gonna make sure that's underneath the bony part. I almost kind of reach out to touch your nose, but underneath the bony part
All right,
of your nose.
my bony part ends right there, so it should be.
Yep. So
It should be
literally just under it,
just
right?
immediately under it. So boom, we're
Yep.
flipping back, and then
Center it. Yeah, you could probably go a little bit higher, maybe. A little bit. Yeah, about there. And
uh-huh.
then when you push it down, you pull the tape away, push it down and hold it on the sides. So you push it down, you want to hold it on the sides, give it about 10 seconds. You want to push it in, hold it in, give it 10 seconds or so. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
If
then
I
give it
got
a
a
good
nose,
rub.
if I got
Give
a
it a
nose,
good rub.
this is what I'd look like. Wah, wah.
That's terrifying.
It is. It is.
Rub it in, give it a good rub, make sure it's stuck down,
Uh-huh.
in all the crevices.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Over
and
the
on the
top,
top.
bottom.
And
Boom.
should be all good.
Oh my goodness. Okay, this is great. But before I get into the breakdown of this, give me 1 to 10. 10 is like that was a perfect application. I'm gonna stand still.
It's very close. It's a little bit off on one side, but like at a glance, I reckon you're at an eight. You're at an
Ah,
eight.
damn. I think that's fair. That's fair. It is a little crooked. Okay.
Not bad for having little to no mirror or kind of
Yeah.
reflection, you
Yeah.
know.
I was watching. I was cheating on the camera.
Um,
Okay, so
yeah, yeah.
greatest of all tapes. This is an interesting product. And back to your bio, when I read that, you've always created products that it's not just, they say in entrepreneurship, find a problem, find a problem you really wish was solved and then solve it, right? But you've not just done that, you've also solved these problems for yourself as well as obviously many others, but you do this in a way that's like, I don't know how. Just explain how you landed on I'm gonna do tape. Of all the things, right? You go from this clothing brand, which was not your first launch of a clothing brand, your first pursuit of that, but you go from this clothing brand which fits. You're like, I need something that fits my lifestyle. I'm active, but I'm also office and businessy and relaxing and things like this. So you create weaponwear.
Yeah.
How did you even land on nose tape?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like you said, and this is like most entrepreneurs, you come up with something that wasn't there, or you solving a problem that you have with Weapon. I'd come back from the States and I got back into training. And when I was training, there was no boutique brands. And at the time, I think we were kind of, with Deluxe, we were kind of winding that up. But Deluxe was streetwear and boutiquey, and I really loved that aspect of clothing, like unique, not big brand,
Yep.
unique, boutique. And so when I was thinking about training apparel, I was in the same thought pattern. I was like, I want to find a cool niche brand like that's boutiquey, that's not Nike, Adidas, like just the big brands. And there wasn't really anything out there at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where that idea came in. And also, there wasn't anything. I think Lorna Jane, which is a big Australian female activewear brand, was doing really well. And it was female only. And there was no male only activewear brands. And I was like, man, the females get everything. Like they had even Lululemon, like it's 90% female and like
Mhm.
10% the guys get a little corner,
That's
in
so
the
very true.
store. You
That's very.
know.
This is actually
So yeah,
this was one of my first ever Lululemon pieces. This jacket is legitimately 15 years old. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, bro, like Lululemon's
Or yeah,
phenomenal. Yeah,
13-ish years old. It's crazy.
yeah, yeah.
But it
So
was
they made great stuff, but like, yeah, it's very women focused, right? So I was like, man, there's nothing for guys. Anyway, so that's where that kind of came from. With Goat, yeah, it was weird because I never thought about it before. And I think, like I was saying, with this whole universe and, it kind of nudges you towards things and then it just evolves and it's got your back. Um, this was never even on my radar. Like I'd never even heard of nose strips. But I'd always had an issue breathing. So from I think 16, 17, a couple of years after I started martial arts, I was sparring, got clocked with a really, really nasty hook, broke my nose, pretty much stuffed me up real good. So from that point on, I'm pretty sure that that's when my breathing issues started, and I was, just a mouth breather from then on out. Never even thought about it. I just thought that's the way life is, and this is how you breathe. So I guess I never even thought about it until, the point of just before launching. And it was Alex Hormozy, who I'd been following a lot at the time, wears a lot of the nose strips.
yeah.
And, you see it and you're just like, what the hell's that? And then we basically I watched one video. It was one video where he was actually explaining why he wears it. And he's like, people ask me all the time, why are you wearing these nose strips? And he's like, it helps me breathe. That's it. I feel better. I can
Yeah.
breathe easier. It's just great. And I just want it on all the time. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to give this a crack because a couple of times my wife had said, why don't you get the surgery? I was like, not for it. It's expensive. I've heard it doesn't always work.
Mhm.
So I was like, what? I'm going to try the Chemist brand. I'll just see how they go, if they work. And it was like a light bulb moment because it just it changed my life essentially.
Yeah.
Chucked it on, could breathe. I was like, oh, this is how you're meant to breathe. Okay. And then slept really good. And so I was like, and then, the wheels started turning, my mind just started going with it. And I was like, firstly, I was like, I need this every night now.
Yep.
So I've screwed myself in a way.
Yeah.
But it makes me feel so good that I don't want to stop using it, especially for sleep. Secondly, I was like, I train a lot. So, and they're always banging on about you should nasal breathe when you're training because you absorb more oxygen, you recover faster. There's so many benefits to it. And I was like, okay, so I'm going to try these when I go for a run, or if I'm going to do some CrossFit, I'm going to chuck one on. They didn't work so well. They breathing wise, amazing for 5 minutes, and then the sweat would just make them pop off. So they're not cut out the Chemist brand, for training. And then again, my mind started going, "Oh, here's an opportunity here. Like, let's design one that will work for sweating, for training." Because with Weapon, we have so many athletes, and partners in that, ecosystem that would benefit from it. And I was like, man, we could use some of our athletes. They would really love this product. There's a market there. There's a sleep market, then there's a sports market. And the funny thing is, when it came out in the mid 90s originally, a lot of NFL players were using it.
Hmm.
So it was used for sleep and sport, but it kind of just fizzled out. And I think the new world we live in, where everyone's looking for that 1%, or, you know, looking for a way to live more holistically healthy,
Yeah.
it's become a trend, like the ice baths and stuff like that. So I think it was just like a mix of timing and necessity for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, that makes
Yeah.
so much sense. That makes complete sense. I remember, man, I've had even the same thing with Hormozy. I saw, a lot of stuff because I love him. I got a couple of his books right up here. But I was the same thing, hearing him talk about it, but I've not had nose breathing issues my whole life. I have had breathing issues with asthma, but I've never had nose specific breathing issues. But I have had allergies for ages. I mean, since I was a kid, and it wrecks me every spring and sometimes several other times throughout the year, especially traveling the world, changing hemisphere, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And I remember when I first put the strip on when I ran the test, you're like, hey, can I send these to you? Can you test it? I'm like, dude, I'm kind of not really interested, but I'll test it out and give you my honest feedback. And I remember when I first put it on, I had been having like my whatever reason kind of allergies, and just it goes from congestion, like one nostril's just fully congested and then both, and then it'll alternate or whatever. And so that's kind of how I live with allergies. And I remember when I first put it on, it was like, oh, dude, it was as if there was this buildup and blockage of the nostril that just stayed compact like this. And this is the edge of my nostril. And then this just pulled it out like that so air could get by. So even with that still kind of packed in there, it's like, oh, now air is moving through there. So it's like, you're getting it through both nostrils, and it's like, damn, it was right away. I felt it, which I did not think that I would. I flat out was like, it's probably whatever. It might be a little, I don't know, maybe the
Yeah.
air tastes a little better. Who knows? But I didn't think it was going to be as significant. And I was just reading the back of the packaging, which it says instantly improves breathing by up to 35%, backed by science and real world results. I'm not a I'm not certain on the percentage or anything, but even right now, putting it on, I would say if I had to put a percentage on it, I wouldn't do it like, oh, I'm at, 20% better breathing right now. I would say that the quality of how I feel, though, that jumps up pretty significantly. And the best way I've heard this explained is Wim Hof, who's like a, breathing and other world master, ice baths, the Iceman. But the best way I heard this explained is it was on a podcast where he was explaining even how I am right now. This is not breathing, right? What our body does throughout the day when we take a breath in and everything, that's not breathing. That's literally just our body reacting, saying, I need to take this in if you want me to keep surviving. So that's not breathing. Breathing is when you're taking, right? You're fully inhaling, fully exhaling, and everything like that, which we rarely ever do throughout our day.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what my experience with this is it gets me from the barely surviving, the body's, I'm just on autopilot survival breathing, which is how we pretty much live because we're not taking deep breaths. My experience with this, with the goat tape, is that it just bumps me up another notch toward actually breathing rather than just survival breath. So I don't know percentage wise, but that's my experience. Is it just, I feel closer, and it's a good reminder physically to go, oh yeah, breathe, instead of just survival response of the body.
Yeah. That's right. And I think that's where a lot of people who may not have, as bad a breathing issues with their nose, it's, or even just during the day, it's a reminder to breathe correctly,
Yeah.
So just having it there and having that free air, like it's so free, right? Like it's just opened up like 10 times. So, you know, whereas usually breathing through your nose, through your mouth is just so free and easy,
Yep.
and that's how it becomes such a bad habit. This now becomes the easier way to breathe.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of just that reminder, and it's actually just easier, right? So I think, yeah, just that feeling upon many other things, like people that go to sleep and wake up feeling amazing. And even if I've said this before, even in regards to the mouth tape, like sometimes, you know, you don't know, okay, is this you kind of trying to wrap your head around, is this actually making me feel better and more rested? Um, or is it a placebo thing, right?
Right. Right.
But at the end of the day, does it matter? Because if you're waking up feeling amazing, but I mean, we obviously know breathing through your nose, that's the way it's meant to be. Your body is going to react way better than breathing through your mouth. And when you're wearing a mouth tape, you literally can only breathe through your nose. So, yes, your body is getting the best out of it, but also, you're waking up knowing that makes you feel better.
Yeah.
Knowing that, oh, I breathed the correct way for 8 hours.
Yeah.
I'm feeling great. Like,
Yeah. I
so
think first of all, I'm a big fan of placebo effect. If I
yeah.
can solve all of my problems in my life, whatever it is, with placebos, sign me up. I will
Yeah.
take that every day over like, hey, take this pill or, whatever it is, if the placebo effect. In fact, I have another sort of, I tested this out review video, which was AG1, Athletic Greens. And this is also on the YouTube channel where I tested it 30 days. AG1, I every single morning, exactly as they say to take it and everything. And I, at the conclusion of that, felt like I did see some benefits, mostly placebo effect. And I was not mad about that. It's not something that I would spend that
Yeah.
much money on because I didn't have
Yeah.
that great of an effect. But some people, they might have a greater effect with them using this, and it might be placebo or it might be legitimate because it's pretty much like a vitamin, right?
Yeah.
So they might see a better impact than I did. But I'm a big fan of placebo effect. If it makes your life better, like that's ideal to me.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. Can you, real quick, because I have not yet tried the mouth tape, can you just short, sweet version, like what is the mouth tape? How does it work? And what's the purpose of the mouth tape?
So the mouth tape, the purpose of it is to keep your mouth closed during the evening, or even if you're doing zone three training, like, when you're trying to breathe only through your mouth, through your nose, sorry. So it's essentially stretchy tape. So it's comfortable. It's not like masking tape. Some people use medical tape or whatever. This is especially designed tape where it's stretchier. It molds to your mouth, and it's quite sticky, so it, sticks to beards and things like that. So the idea is just to keep your mouth closed, so that you're only breathing through your nose, while you wear it.
Mhm.
Um, and it's just a fail safe, I guess. Like with the nose strips, you're definitely going to breathe through your nose a lot more. But when we're asleep, the jaw muscles, they relax. So they still have a tendency to drop open. So the mouth tape and you can still then end up breathing through your mouth. So the mouth tape basically just keeps it shut, ensures that you're breathing through your nose for the entirety of the evening. So,
Got you.
or whenever you use it.
And it does stick to facial hair. That was going to be my next question. It does stick to facial hair and function.
Yeah, yeah. We got the adhesive, just right. So like we played around with a whole different range of adhesives. Some, I think that our first batch were really, really sticky, like it would rip your face off. Which works phenomenally if you've got massive beard or whatever, like no matter what, it's sticking. Um, but not everyone has a beard, so we kind of needed to, tweak it a little bit so it worked for everyone.
Mhm.
Um, Second batch was a bit too light on the adhesive, so if you had facial hair, you'd put it on, it'd work a bit, but it's midway through the night and starts peeling off and it gets a bit annoying. So we've now landed on the perfect adhesive where it's like sticks to facial hair, will stay on all night, but it's not too hard to take off in the morning. So
Got you.
like everything, yeah, we did a lot of testing and just to get it perfectly because I just didn't want to buy a product off the shelf and go, hey, this is our brand. I wanted to set it apart. And that's why we started with the strips like the ones you're wearing now that work for, exercise
Yeah.
because there wasn't really any that were doing the job well. So yeah.
Honestly, as we were sitting here and I'm listening to you talk, I'm thinking, I wish I had worn this yesterday because I rolled with my jujitsu instructor. He's a brown belt, and this is funny because it was literally just a few days after I had him on the podcast. And
Yeah.
that episode's not out yet, but it will be mid-February. And he just he's just smothered me. He just did exactly what I needed to have happen, to be honest. But basically, long story short, is I I gave up due to pressure because I felt like I was like a moment away from an asthma attack. And
Yeah.
which I haven't had in probably a decade, maybe even longer than that, probably 17 years. I think high school was the last time I had an asthma attack, like late high school, during basketball season. And anyway, I felt that way yesterday rolling with him, and that's exactly what I needed because anyway, the lessons were all there. But the point is, I was freaked out because of breathing, and I'm like, man, if I'd had the strip, would it, could I have gone further,
Yeah.
whatever? But whatever, same valuable lesson applied, and that probably would have ended in the same result. But I would have gone longer in the round before like freaking out, right?
It definitely would have helped, but like I think certain things like that situation is probably a lot of mental as well, like not
Sure.
panicking,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
rolling with it. And that's a lot with BJJ is like roll with it, don't fight it.
I
Just
was doing
breathe.
all the white belt things. I was flailing,
Yeah,
just arms out. I was doing all the white belt things.
yeah. Breathing
Everything.
from your chest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, freaking out, all that. That's what it was. But okay, so what I'm very curious about is something kind of universal, no matter what business somebody's in, especially in this era where people are trying to go viral or trying to be big and famous and all of these things, which I have my own opinions about how people go about this, and I'm sure you do too. But what I want to get into here is something that you sort of touched on. You tap danced a little bit, but I want to dive into this, which is something I've always admired about anything that you touch, which is branding. And I have watched over a decade your branding get better and better and better. And most significant spike in that, I would say, has been over the last, 4 or 5 years. And I look at the packaging, the feel of this, how it's packaged, the style, all of this stuff is it's fascinating to me because I'm not very artistic the way that you are, and the way that graphic design background and all these things. You have a really high level of skill. I've seen you hand draw on designs and everything from weapon and clothing and among other things that you've just designed from your brain, which is wild to me. So where you stand now is very different from when you and I were catching up, let's say in 2020, when we were holding kind of online community events and things like that. Your level of understanding of building a brand and branding is way different now than it was then. I feel like you have skyrocketed in your know-how and things like this, with still a high hunger to keep learning. But if we were at the same point at that time, I feel like I am up now one step and you are up now a dozen steps or more compared to where you were then. So I would love to learn from you and also share with other people who are entrepreneurial or considering some path or pursuit of entrepreneurial life. For me right now, very early stages of building the YouTube channel, as well as bringing the podcast back, which these are going to kind of work and live together and everything like that. So selfishly, I want to know and pick your brain on branding, but also for the community, for anybody that's listening to this, I'm very curious of what you know now that you didn't know 5 years ago, where you can boil it all down. Yeah, we put all this stuff in there, but if we just boil it all down, here's what's key and important with branding and what sort of order these things should go for somebody who wants to build a good brand.
Yeah, okay. So I think it starts with I'm I'm a creative person. So I'm just lucky to be that way inclined. I'm not a numbers guy. Like I'm a creative. So that helps massively. Some people aren't that creative. But I do think people can learn and you do pick up things along the way. I think when we started Weapon, and even Deluxe before that, I was still early days with graphic design. So that whole period is just testing and measuring, just trialing things. Like, and that's the beauty of running your own business, like, and a startup, if you're bootstrapping, is like, that's the fun of it. Try testing things like designing your first logo, designing your first website. And I think everyone should go through it. It's kind of like the building a personal brand thing, right? Like you see these people, like Gary V and all the, it could be a fitness guy or female or or Alex Hormozy. You see where they're at and you're just like, oh, like it's just overwhelming. It's like, how can I get there? But literally all they did was they just started and they just didn't stop. And they just kept getting better and better and better. And it compounds. I feel like it doesn't go like 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like 1, 2, 4, 10, 20, 50. And that, like you said, at that last kind of 5 years, it's gone from here to here. Um, and it's like that compounding effect. And I think it's the same when you're building your personal brand and getting followers. It might start real slow and you're getting like one follower a day, and then you're just doing these videos that are getting barely any views, but you just keep doing it. And it's the same with YouTube channel and subscribers. And I think there was a singer talking to Stephen Bartlett from Diary of a CEO, and they were like, your following is at like 5 or 10 million like a year ago. It's now 20 million. Like it just went like that.
Yeah.
And it's this compounding thing, right? And I think it's the same with branding and design. Like you just keep doing it and trialing and erroring and learning as you go. And then you just get better and better and better. And I think that's all I did. Like I mean, yes, I have a creative mind, and so I can see things kind of differently. Um, but the whole way through Weapon and the 10 years of doing that and Go, it's only ever been me doing it in terms of like I don't have the funds to pay someone else. So I need to figure it out, right? Like I'm not going to some venture capitalist and going, yeah, hey, can I have 2 mil just to get started?
Yeah.
We're gonna hire some designers. It was just me. So I was like, I got to figure it out.
That's I will not forget this video. This guy, I don't remember how I came across it, somewhere on social media, where he's like, people are asking me, how are you so good at everything? You do everything, all this DIY stuff around the house, and you can do this and you can do that. And he goes, it's because I'm poor. I can't afford to pay the guy that does this thing. And I was like,
Yeah.
yes. I'm like,
Yes.
that's it.
That's right.
That's how I could do so much. Is like, I haven't been able to afford to pay the guy that does the thing, you
That's
know?
right.
And
I
that's
honestly feel like it, and it's kind of like comes back to our parents. Like they're so handy, right? They could do shit. Like, and then it came to our generation, and we're like, we can't do shit because we pay everyone else. You like, can you just do that for me? Like, so I think the beautiful thing about startups is that a lot of the time you don't have the funds to just pay everyone to do this. So you learn, and that's the best part of running a business is learning, failing. And that's what I was saying earlier on is for education, I think it's so important that, like we just do it and try it and, go for it. Because especially when you're young, because you can fail a billion times and then still find a career or find success later on.
yeah,
It gets a bit harder when you're 50 plus or whatever, but it's still like the whole process of learning along the way is the best bit, and it's kind of like the funnest as well.
right.
So I think where I got to with Go was over 10 years of learning, but and trial and error. But I kind of knew exactly, I was kind of at a point where I knew exactly where I wanted to go with it. I think with Weapon, I had an idea of what I wanted, but I never really pinpointed, the exact demographic, the exact, problem this solved because it's quite broad, right? Sportswear, it's broad. Um, this is one product, and it does a specific thing. And so that made life very easy because I was like, all right, this is who I'm designing for, and this is the product. That's it. It's pretty cut and dry. So it made things a lot easier.
So if you were to say to the person out there listening to this who has had this idea burning in their head for years, or and you know that, right? Any entrepreneur knows, like, oh man, I've had this kind of thing, whatever, and then eventually they jump on it or they don't, or they find something else that makes them go, yes, this is the thing I'm going to pursue. To the person that's listening to this right now that has an idea, whatever it is, whether it's some novel, brand new thing never invented, or it's just stepping into the arena of something that's already out there, that already exists, and they know nothing about how to make or build or grow or establish a brand that's trusted, that's quality. What would you say to the person that doesn't have a clue, even the first step, but let alone going beyond that to say, okay, here's what I need to do to just start and make sure you get this right at the beginning. But from that point on, here's what you should make sure in the most simple way that you could put it for them.
I would say, firstly, you would they would probably know the product or the niche or whatever they're getting into, what they're selling. The second thing, obviously, they've got that in mind. You would need to know, okay, how am I going to deliver that? Is it a product that I need to resell or make like what we do? Or is it a service? So figure that out. Figure out what is the product and how am I going to deliver it? Is it an online course? Okay, so I've got to film stuff, I've got to put it up online, and then I've got to advertise. So figure out what is the product I'm going to deliver. Secondly, a name, and it might sound simple, but a name is very important because it makes a big difference in the consumer or the customer's eyes and mentality. So for example, goat, I mean, for me, when I was thinking of a name for this business, I wanted something that was instantly recognizable, that everyone kind of knew what it meant. And when you were thinking about breathing or training or competing, you were the goat. You were the goat at,
Yep.
you know, so goat, and it just is cool. Like it's a it's a word that everyone just associates with being the best, the coolest, whatever it is, you are top notch. So goat was a killer name for me. I knew that was the one from the start. So, but from there, it's like, okay, you got this cool name, but you got to make sure that you can use it, right? So we had to make sure that we could get a trademark using that name or using that branding. So that's very important as well, because I've had a lot of clients in the past who have started businesses and they literally had started and six, 12 months in, and they get a letter from someone saying, hey, we're registered with that name or very similar in the same field. You need to cease to
Yeah.
like close your business now or change your name. Otherwise, we're going to court. So you really need to be careful about your name. Make sure there's no, webs or make sure you can get your website URL, your Instagram. So for when I started, I looked at the industry I was in and I said, okay, is goat going to be an issue? So we figured that out. I talked to some trademark lawyers. They were like, no, you should be sweet. So we started a trademark for that because I knew it would potentially be a really big brand that people, would be seeing everywhere. So I got that down pat, and then I was like, okay, website URL. What can we use? How can we get goat.com or whatever? Will it work? Instagram, TikTok. I mean, you guys might not need to worry about TikTok. I don't know if it's still going or not,
Yeah.
but yeah, like look at all the areas, all the platforms that you're going to advertise. Will this name work? Um, then logo design, website. So all the really fun parts, but I think the important part is like, how am I going to get the product? How am I going to deliver the product?
Mhm.
And then how am I going to name, logo, trademark, website platforms, like all of that stuff, because that's kind of like the foundation. And then you can start, growing the brand around it.
Right.
I would also like what I generally do when I'm starting a brand or I'm helping a new business is we do style guides. So like mood boards, color palettes, what fonts, what works for that industry that you're in. So if Goat, for example, it's kind of clean, little bit sporty, so I um, wanted it to make sure there's my son running in the room again.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Um, let hold for 2 seconds.
Yep.
That's what I need to finish this one.
Nelly.
The doorstop did not work.
He just blasted right through it like a toddler
Yeah,
would.
he just went straight through it. Freight train. Um, Okay, let's re
Yep.
yeah, so I think with the branding of Goat, I wanted it to be clean, simple colors, black and white. Work in any forum. It's timeless in a way. So I think the branding part of things at the early stages, that's really important as well. And then you can kind of grow on it. Like I feel like having a brand and an image down pat from day one is very unrealistic. So I wouldn't stress too much about the evolution or like having it nailed in one hit. Because
Yeah.
honestly, it's very rare. Like you would see, even if you look back at Nike from 1963 or whenever they launched, very different to the Nike today.
Yeah. Same with Apple.
Yeah, and Apple, like, so I wouldn't stress too much.
Yeah. So most people, at least in my experience, in myself as well as in chatting with other entrepreneurs and people that want to launch something or do something, they get stuck in the design phase and all these things. And if I'm hearing you correctly, what level of this would you say just pick something, go, and then you can change it later?
Probably, yeah, 90% just do it.
Okay.
I have some friends that like I love them dearly and they want to start something, but they have been wanting to start something for probably 8 years.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying, just do it because you could have started something 8 years ago, tried and failed, and started 10 other businesses
Hmm.
and tried and failed. And you might be on the one that's winning now.
Yeah.
But you're now going to start, or you may start, who knows, now. And then that process starts now. But you could have started that process of trying and failing 8 years ago. So it's the same with a brand. The one thing you don't want to do is, like, for example, Goat, sick name, awesome, doing really well. And then someone comes in and goes, hey, that's my name. Like the exact same thing happened to the brand Represent, the clothing brand Represent. So those guys started the brand. A couple of brothers from the UK just was like, let's start a brand. That's a cool name. They started. Took a few years, but then they really started hitting home runs. That's when someone from Europe, I think it was, came in and said, I own that name. you need to pay me $20 million or whatever that figure was
Yeah.
to keep that name. And they had to come to some agreement and pay the guy out. So it could be very costly. So I
Yeah.
would get that down pat. But in terms of like branding, um, design and the feel and look of your brand, like I wouldn't stress too much because it's gonna evolve. The the key is to just start. And
Yeah.
it's the same with building a personal brand and filming content. Like people are so afraid of not being liked.
Yeah.
So they don't start
Yeah.
or failing. Like, oh, my videos suck. Or people comment on my videos and go, you're shit at this. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so many people, all those other guys would have had the same comments, the
Yeah.
guys that have a million followers plus. But they just kept going.
Started
So
and
I
kept
think
going.
that's the
I
key.
I had 4 days ago, maybe. I was out here filming, right? I'm in the studio at the house, and I was out here filming, and I didn't know it, but Jeanette was inside with the boys, and it was close to bedtime, and she was like, "Oh, let's watch Daddy's vlogs, right?" Because I've been doing a vlog every single week. I've been releasing a vlog. I think I'm on
Yeah.
now. I just released number 7, and so they made it through like 1 through 3, I think it was, and she killed me, this is so accurate for so many people. I've heard this from I don't know how many different highly successful entrepreneurs, business people, whoever they are. But this is like the story of the people closest to you don't care, or they just,
Yeah.
I mean, I go inside and wrap up
Yeah.
in here, and my oldest, my 3-year-old, he's asleep, like next to her. They were watching it. She's on the couch, and he's like sleeping on her. She's like, "Oh, we watched, vlogs 1 through 3," and I was like, "Oh, awesome! Like, thanks for the support." And she goes, "Yeah, it put him to sleep about halfway through the third one when you went into coaching mode in this vlog and you just rambled on and on and on." She's like, "I almost fell asleep too." I'm like, damn, because what I don't want is a vlog that's just long drawn out. I just want to capture the story. Here's how the week went. You get the idea. I don't need to have this long drawn out, but I'm a long-winded speaker.
Yeah.
And it was like, what excellent feedback from right here under my roof. The people who could care less of what I do or choose to do with my career or anything, as long as we're fed, healthy, and we get to be together, it's like whatever you do, it doesn't really matter. But that is the feedback that if somebody were in my comments and said the same thing, it's like, yeah, yeah, I already heard that from home. Like they kind of
I got it.
help build my armor up, but it's also good feedback to just go, damn, you're right. That was a very boring part, and it should have been in there, and see it myself, and be able to assess it in that way. But if I were still sitting here trying to figure out how do I want these things to be edited and what style do I want and what if I were still sitting on the starting block, then I wouldn't have learned that lesson and be able to adjust the next week. And I'll tell you right now, I got this morning the edit of the first draft from last week, and I'm hyped. I'm hyped. I'm like,
Nice.
this is maybe the best one yet.
Yes,
And
that's awesome.
it just feels good, but I had to go through that to get there, right? And you hear
Yeah,
that
and it will.
all the time from people, from
Yeah.
entrepreneurs, and people like yourself that are going through it, trudging along. And instead of 8 years ago, waiting 8 years, and like I had this idea and not doing it, you started it 8 years ago, and you went through 8 years of people hating on it, of negative feedback, of criticism, of all that, but you then get to apply it, which is probably partially why your brand knowledge is so far ahead now than the previous trend line of what it was.
Yeah, and I think sticking to one thing is like, okay, you can have kind of evolutions of businesses and what you're doing, but I feel like a lot of us, like, it's the shiny object syndrome where we just, oh, this thing's hot now. I'm gonna, because I'm bored with this, or this thing is not really going how I wanted it to at the speed that I wanted it to. So I'm gonna go try this.
Yeah.
I feel like we do that a lot, and I'm kind of proud of myself, but also like, how the fuck did you do that
Yeah.
with Weapon? Because for 10 years, I literally just did that. It's the first thing that was like a slight diversion from that, and it just so happened to be very successful. But I think all of that, just doing the same thing, and yes, there were evolutions of the business within the business, but I never went and started selling cars, or just kind of where I could have, or worked at the mines, which is a big thing here. It's like, oh, my mates are making 100 to 200K a year. I'm living off peanuts. So
Hmm.
I'm going to go and do that for a
Yeah.
bit. You know what I mean? I just
Yeah.
stayed true, believed that it would happen.
The
And
delusion.
yeah, the delusion theory,
Stick with the delusion long enough and you will win. You will win.
yeah, yeah,
So
that's right.
what would you say are the most important things to, I'm thinking in terms of like virtues, right? So virtues of brand development, that it's like, yeah, you can evolve the style of what it looks like, the color, the font, things like that, the logo, even the name. You can pick something,
Yeah.
get started, and you can change those later. But what things are must have, do not change this when it comes to brands that you've recognized as like people or brands that try to change these up? These are kind of core virtues. When they try to change their virtues, this is what kills a brand's growth or development. What sort of things
I
can
think I think product, what you're delivering is really important if it's working. Obviously, if it's not working, you test and measure and see if you can find that niche. But if you have a product that's working, I see a lot of brands, especially clothing and apparel, where they try and do it all.
Mm.
And they had something that was working really well. And then they were like, but we should release this and we should do this. And they invest so much time and money into other areas, and they lose focus on the one thing that was doing really well, and then it just tanks.
Mhm.
So I think that's probably the main thing. If you have something that the market wants and you know that it's working, just stay true to that. You can deviate and add a few things. Like we're adding a few things that this year that complement the product, and go hand in hand with the product. But we're not going and selling breathwork packages, or just stay true to the product and what actually works.
Got
Yeah,
you. Got you. That makes
because
sense.
everything else can kind of really change, and like I said, even business names change, and logos, fonts, colors, imagery, style, and sometimes you get backlash. When, for example, Jaguar, I think, the car brand Jaguar just came out with a new style and rebrand, and it bombed, completely bombed. But Jaguar still, the product they offer is still at a certain level, and it still appeals. So until that product starts tanking, they can recover from the brand change, and maybe people will start appreciating it after 5 years. Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah, maybe they're playing, it's a long-term move and they even factored this in, like, hey, this is what to expect.
Yeah. But
I
when
see.
they, like these companies that were really great manufacturers, and then let's say they moved to China, or somewhere where or somewhere in Asia, that the quality of hand craftsmanship that previously were there is not there, because they're trying to mass produce and cut costs.
Mm.
That's when it becomes issues. So
Got you.
yeah, don't change something that's not broken.
Got you. That makes sense. What comes to mind for me, and you would know this better than I would, so that's why I'm asking this. What comes to mind for me is, as far as branding, is it's not to say, stick to your morals, your virtues, but it's to say like be true. You know what I mean? Like there's things, for example, Nike right now, they just had a CEO change, and a lot of the people, Nike World Headquarters is right down the street here. And a lot of people that work at Nike are like, oh man, we're so glad the new CEO, we're hyped up. We're going to get back to the sports and sports specific and focus and being athletes and all these things like Nike should be. But you look back at like the BLM movement around George Floyd and all this, where everything was like DEI and, making a big push for all this stuff and getting away from, hey, just do it. It's the sport, it's athletes, just do it. Regardless of that's not our realm to, hop into this political debate, social debate, socioeconomic debate, any of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And sure, there's opinions on whether companies should take a stance on that or should not. But the question here is about branding and sticking true to whatever your thing is, right? So to me, when I think of branding, and I'm thinking more specifically individuals, especially, hey, I'm trying to grow a YouTube channel, a podcast, whatever else, my brand, quote unquote. One of the core things that I stick with is like the reviews. I'm not going to come out here and give some BS review of a product or a service. I'm going to keep it very real. And there's some things like I give grace where I go, it's not a perfect product or this service wasn't perfect, but I would definitely use it again. Here are the problems with it, but I still think it's fantastic, whatever those may be, right? And that to me is that authenticity is a non-negotiable for me. And I think of this in terms of brands where it's like, what would that be for GOAT or for Nike or for Apple or whoever it is as a virtue? Is that something that is a must have where you have a certain virtue where we don't stray from this? Do you see that in brands, or am I seeing this and kind of making this up? And it's like, well, not that important. You can actually recover from this.
I think most things you can recover from. But like for us with GOAT, for example, I've always said we are not going to be the cheapest brand, but we are going to be the best brand. So the product, the quality level, what we offer to the customer, the service we give, that is top notch.
Yeah.
You might pay a little bit more for it, but that's what you're going to get. So that will always be GOAT.
Yeah.
So I think things like that, and like you said, that authenticity with product reviews, that's important because people come to you for that.
Yeah.
And then if you just start changing up and selling out and just taking anything that you can get, then those true followers that actually loved what you did, they're going to kind of drop off. And then you're entertaining a new kind of audience.
Yeah.
But it's not that you can't survive that. But if you make a really good income from what you were previously doing and it was doing well, like there's some mistakes that you can make, and people do that all the time. And it's a shiny object thing, right? So let's say you start getting some traction, your vlog's doing really well, you're doing some of these authentic reviews, then everyone wants you to review their product. So you're like, oh, cash is everywhere. Like it's coming in left, right, and center. I'm doing product reviews every other day. And then, you start being a little bit more lenient because like the more that you're friendlier to these brands, the more brands want you to review them, the more money you get. But then you kind of lost the thing that got you to that point.
Yeah.
In the first place. You know what I mean?
So much sense. You know what? That makes so much sense. I hadn't even thought about that. And I'm so damn glad you just brought this up and explained it to me, because now I can sort of prepare for that and create more clear boundaries, right? Boundary that immediately pops up for me is I'm not going to accept an offer to review a product that I would not personally use if they didn't offer it to me,
Yeah.
Because like
100%.
the nose tape was close to that boundary for me, but it wasn't out of bounds because it wasn't as if I was like, I would never use that. It was just like, I wouldn't pay for it. I even mentioned that in the review. It was like, it's not something that I was seeking or something that I would pay for, but
Yeah.
having had this sent to me to review and everything, this is great. And I would use this and reuse it again. You know, I see
Yeah.
the benefits of it, but it wasn't something I was seeking
And
versus
I,
like,
yeah.
hey, we have a ton of jewelry. Like, I'm not a jewelry wearer, right? Oh, we have a ton of rings in this 8-piece ring collection and stuff. Would you review it? I'd be like, no, because I don't wear rings unless it served some wild purpose where it was like, hey, you wear these rings and all of a sudden, all your laundry gets automatically done and folded.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if it was some powerful ring like this,
Yeah.
it helps. You explaining this to me helps me to build that barrier to make sure that I avoid those like sellout things, because I cannot stand seeing that in people that I really admire, where I look to them
Yeah.
for their perspective on certain stuff. And I'm like, man, what a sellout. When it's
Yeah.
so clear that it's like you wouldn't even give this 2 minutes of attention if they didn't pay you all this
Yeah.
money or whatever, right? So that to
Yeah.
me it's so important to me to just maintain authenticity, because I believe in kind of the old school, your word is all you have, right? Your word is bond. And I do believe that and I strive for that.
I
So yeah,
think
that's super helpful.
I think that's how it originally started, right? Like people built following, um, people, and that following is built on trust. You feel like you know that person, you can trust that person that you follow. And then maybe they started using a product and they genuinely were like, oh, man, this product is amazing. And then other brands were like, shit, we can use this for marketing.
Mhm.
Let's send them some product. And then they would make money off it. And then they start spruiking this product or reviewing it. Um, but that's where the lines all started getting blurred, right? And then, it became a money-making thing. And so it's unfortunate because that trust that you built with the followers is now kind of blown out of the water because it's so transparent when someone is just flogging a product
Yeah.
because, you know, and look, I'm not going to say that we don't offer products to athletes and influencers in the hopes that they will promote it
Mhm.
because it works.
Yeah.
But we always only partner with someone that we feel will get a benefit from it. And like when I send some product to you, I remember saying to you, like, honestly, just try it. And if it helps you, wicked. If it
Yeah.
doesn't, sweet. You don't have to review it. Like, just throw it in the bin.
Yeah.
I don't want you to use it or promote it if you
Yeah.
don't use it. It doesn't feel right with me.
Mhm.
We had this influencer in Perth. She's an amazing chick, and her husband is a friend of mine, and he suffers with really bad nose, and he was like, dude, can I get some of the tape? This is when we first launched,
Mhm.
and so I went over there and I dropped off some tape. I said, dude, have a go, see, let me know how you went. That same night, this was like the day after we launched. That same night, he chucked it on and she filmed him putting it on. He's like, holy shit, babe, this is incredible. He's
Yeah.
like, you got to try it. And this was fully genuine. He's like, you should try it, just chuck it on. And so he filmed her putting it on and she was like, whoa, this is crazy. She's like, and she just, I don't know, as a friendly thing, put it on her Instagram stories. This chick has 500,000 followers. And I got home. I literally hadn't even got home. I was walking in the door and I looked at our Shopify and like the amount of people that were on our store at that point and the sales that came through over the next 24 hours was insane. And I was like, this is crazy. And I couldn't understand it until I went on Instagram and I saw she had posted. I'm like, this is why.
Yeah.
And subsequently, I spoke to her afterwards and I was like, look, this was incredible. Like, would you do it again? And she's like, I would do it if I use the product. I don't ever do it if it's not a product I don't use or will not use.
Love it.
So I was like 100%, like, I do not want you to post because like it's not even in your wheelhouse. Like she usually does fashion and stuff. So it's so far out that if you don't use it, I don't want you to talk about it.
Yeah.
So um yeah, and it was just mind-boggling. But like
Yeah.
it can work if the if the audience is genuinely
Yeah.
interested and trust you, then I think
Yeah.
it works really well.
And to be clear, I am a big fan of that style of marketing, of affiliate marketing. I'm a huge fan of it. And the reason I'm a fan of it is because it's the best way to get good insight and good info on products or services that you otherwise don't have a trusted source on. But the thing that I'm speaking to here are the people who are just profit first and then, whatever else comes after that. It's like they're the ones that are taking on things and giving bullshit reviews where it's like you're killing the authenticity and the actual value of affiliate marketing when you do this, because I want somebody who's going to tell me their honest opinion on this movie that's in movie theaters for me to go watch this movie and take my family to or whatever. I don't want somebody that's going to be like, ooh, I never watch horror films. I'm only a Disney watcher, but this horror film is amazing. And it's like, I don't want that. Just be you, keep it real, stick to the things that you actually use or consume, and let those people, let the authentic voices give a voice to wonderful products. I found some amazing stuff over the years because somebody else put me onto it. My brother, the calendar that we have in our kitchen right now, this was on one of the vlogs 2 weeks ago or something, was my install of this calendar. This is my favorite thing in our house right now. It's this massive screen that is living in our kitchen, the dining room, right behind our dining table. And it does everything from meals, chores, whatever, everybody's schedule, all our, including the dog. We all have our calendar in one place now. We can see the schedule, what's going on today, what's coming up, whose chores are up, whatever. But when it's not in use, it's a digital photo frame and it just goes by and you can do
Cool.
photos and video. And I love this thing, right? The Skylight calendar, which I'm like, I had no idea this existed, but my brother, who's the tech guy in our family, he had it, months and months and months ago.
Yeah.
His place, I was like, what is this? This is so sick. And he kind of showed me how it works. And I was like, we have to get one. That less is like affiliate marketing because it was just an authentic word of mouth. So I'm a big fan of this, but only when it's legitimate, only when it's authentic. Like now that I've spoken about it, I'm going to put the Skylight calendar link in wherever I drop this.
Do it because I want to see it too.
Bro, I love this thing. And especially with the little ones, man, we sit at the table now and we'll sit there for an hour easily, where all it is like identifying like, oh, that's Uncle Billy, that's Uncle Ryan, or this is so-and-so, or that's so-and-so. Oh, that's me and mommy, that's me and daddy. And he's just locked in at 3 years old. He gets to see everybody all the time. He loves seeing all these places. Oh, that's when we were in Greece, or, it's something where we just get gathered around the table because of this frame, which was not the original intention, mind you. It's just a massive benefit of having it. And I'm like, dude, I love this. But same thing, because I love this thing, I want to share the experience that I've had and how it's benefited not only our mealtime, but just sitting and hanging out. And that's something where it's like, I'll make an affiliate link for this and pop it into the description because I see massive benefit. But I do need to make an actual review video because there's a couple things that I dislike about it. First and foremost, I ran into one yesterday. You can like take a photo of something and it'll automatically populate in there. So like recipes, for example, you can just snap a photo, basically send a text. You snap a photo, text it off to your calendar, and it'll auto-populate, which it works great. The problem is on the calendar, I could not access the recipe without adding the recipe to today's meal and then clicking on it. It's a step I shouldn't have to do. I should be able to open the recipe book from the calendar, right? I shouldn't have to add it to then access the recipe. 100%. Anyway, so that's one of my gripes. But overall, this thing's incredible, and so on and so forth. I got it, bro. I got to show you. You're gonna love this thing.
I'm keen. And that idea you had actually from one of your other vlogs was the story time using ChatGPT. I was like, dude, that's such a good hack.
Have you been doing it?
No, I haven't done it yet, but I'm like, dude, that is so good. Like,
oh man,
that's so epic.
I'm gonna see here. I have the audio running. I'm gonna see. Hopefully, it doesn't go away, but I'm gonna see if I can pull up the thread to show you because literally. Oh yeah, okay, perfect. We should still be good. So this is my bedtime story thread. Let's see if I can get it in here. This is my
I like
bedtime story thread for the little one, where I just create
that's so
bedtime
cool.
story, and between each photo is a different story that is
Like
like, oh,
story.
I want a robot puppy story. Okay, cool. Instantly make it. And bro, there's so many of these.
That's so good.
And it's just
That was,
literally, what are you feeling? What kind of story do you want? Okay, cool. And then sometimes as I'm reading through the story, I'll change it up a little bit to be more
yeah,
customized to him, you know?
yeah, yeah.
But
No, that
yeah,
was
bro,
cool.
it's
Great hack.
so good. Yeah. So it's stuff like this that I'm like, there's so much that I have found so useful in my life as well as, you know, in parenthood, where, you
Yeah,
know, especially as an entrepreneur and parent to multiple kids now, anything we can find to buy ourselves time, improve the impact we have with our time is all I'm after,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So yeah,
Mental.
that's oh
Well,
man, that's a big one for sure. The story time using ChatGPT to create bedtime stories for the littles. And there's so much more, man. I have a list. I have an Excel sheet of stuff where I go, oh, I need to share a review on this because these are the most impactful things that I use in my day to day or, you know,
yeah,
year over year, whatever it may be. I have a list of stuff that's like, I need to make reviews for this because there's people out there that are looking for this thing and they need an honest, genuine review of the thing so that they can
yeah,
either make a sound decision of now that's not for me or make a sound decision and go, I've been looking for this all my life. You know what I mean?
yeah, 100%. And that comes back to that authenticity. You know, like if you're just a brand whore, like no one really cares anymore. You know, and it could be a really good product or some cool hack like the chat GBT thing. But if people don't value what you say anymore because it's kind of hollow, then it gets lost.
That's so
So
real. So
and
I want to transition a bit just because we were talking kids and
yeah,
family and everything like this. You have been entering a world that I've been living in for months now with Jeanette. And I don't know how long you've been in this. I don't know what sparked it, but you've been interested in everyday toxins in our lives.
yeah.
Tell us about this. What's the origin of this to pop up in your realm to where you're a busy dad, entrepreneur, father of two, and you're like, this is something I'm going to pay attention to. Where did this pop up and what's the evolution of it to where we sit right now, where
I
talks are the topic for you?
Yeah. Well, I was listening to a podcast and they had a specialist, toxic specialist on there, toxins specialist. And I was just like, yeah, I'll listen to it. It's the next one up on the list. And she was talking about, you know, her story and yeah, and just the different toxins and everything we use, you know, and the effects that it's having on us. And to be honest, it was little things that you could change. You know, like um, it was simple things like the plastics used in containers. Like why, you know, like you can get glass containers from Amazon for next to nothing. But why are we using plastic ones?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And then down to, you know, the non-stick pans, which was probably the hardest shift
Yeah.
going to stainless steel and having, you know, that whole thing we're still getting our heads around, but it's working. Like they're great. And like just again have that back of your mind knowledge that, you know, this is a much healthier option for you and your family. Um, Deodorants, that one's quite easy nowadays. You know, we found quite a good deodorant that Nelly had been using for a little while, and I was like, man, I'm still using the spray, you know, like,
Yeah.
and like to be honest, like it's nothing that's really ever affected me before. Like I've never had any, well, that I know of, health issues related to the toxins,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, in the products we use or whatever it may be. But I was just like, man, there's some simple shifts that we can make that might be beneficial for especially our kids, you know,
Yeah.
in the future. So yeah, it was just something that I kind of went down that rabbit hole like I do with these podcasts. This is kind of yeah.
Was this Diary of a CEO?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Even
Yeah.
okay,
It
perfect.
gets
So
me every time.
okay, first of all, absolutely love Diary of a CEO podcast with Stephen Bartlett. If you are it, he's a business person. If you're US based, he's like a guy he's 30 years old, maybe 31 now. He's one of the sharks on Shark Tank, but it's Dragon's Den for the UK version. But his podcast is not a business podcast. It is an incredible assortment of experts, fascinating individuals, people who have achieved wild feats. And in my opinion, Stephen Bartlett is the best interviewer of our era, period. The way that he can dig into certain topics and know just how far to push a nerve or to release pushing on a certain nerve is unlike anybody I've ever seen in our era or even the era before. I don't have anybody that I can compare him to. He's ridiculously good. So his interviews every time are fascinating. They're so good. So
good.
This is my review. Give love to Diary of a CEO. Seriously, huge fan. There's guaranteed an episode on a topic that you would be fascinated to dive into. So quick plug for that, which I have no affiliate links for that.
But honestly, like I'm a massive fan as well, and I just constantly, and in fact, I saw him in person on stage, like he came to Perth and did a talk before I'd ever heard of the podcast, and Nelly had even bought me a book before that. So she was like, "Oh, I think you might like this."
Yeah.
And it was Diary of a CEO book. And I was like, man, this book's phenomenal. And
Yeah.
then I went to the talk, and then it was like, oh, he does podcasts. And I'm kind of hooked on that. And like every other day now, I'm like, babe, there was this person about this, and I'm like banging on about, and we should start doing this. And she's like, oh, here we go. Like, it's another thing.
This is spot on. So this was exact same scenario with Jeanette, who in our household, we've taken on a few different roles of, you're kind of this person, I'm that person. We both try to level up in each of these areas, but you're the consumer of this and you digest that information and data, you bring it back and share it here. I'll do the same with these areas or these topics. And so we kind of have our own mastermind that way in the household. She studied biology in college. This is, in her realm. And I remember her coming to me. I mean, this was years ago. She was like, oh, we should kind of get rid of this, like our plastic cookware. We should move to silicone and these straws. No more plastic straws. Let's go silicone straws. I'm like, whatever. Go ahead, do whatever. I'm okay. I don't even need to know the details, but whatever. Yeah. The one thing I will say is, now not on the tail end because it's a constantly evolving journey of learning of toxins and stuff like this, but further down the road than I was in my relatively recent past, the one thing I will say is most of the stuff that's presented by an expert, for example, on the episode of Diary of CEO, most of the stuff that's presented, it's not profoundly complex. You could make it very complex and get into what does a PFA stand for and all these things. You could definitely do that. But what I mean when I say it's not profoundly complex, it's like, think about it. Plastic versus glass. What one of these seems to be more toxic in terms of, can I scrape it off if I'm heating it up or whatever, right? Yeah. So it makes total sense. Like I've never had glass scrape off with a fork or anything like this, but I have had plastic melt in the microwave, things like this. So it's not so complex in this realm, but there are little details that make it a lot easier to make that transition. For example, your stainless steel, when that was recent, I mean, as recent as just a couple months ago, Jeanette's like, all this cookware, the non-stick's gone, we're going stainless steel. And I'm like,
literally the same.
And then she's like, a couple things you need to know about stainless steel, because she's doing her digging and learning. You got to heat it up to a certain level first before you put it on. Whereas, the old nonstick stuff, you can heat it up. It could still be cold and you could put something in there in the pan or whatever, and it's just fine. Stainless steel, heat it up to a certain point. It cooks more evenly, which is awesome. But if you don't have a proper heat up, it's going to be really hard because the stuff's going to stick to it. And
Yeah.
so there's little tips of like, yeah, heat it up to this point, kind of medium low, and then sprinkle water on there. If it beads up and bounces around, then it's ready to cook. And it's like,
That's a good one.
did you know this?
No, I didn't know that.
Okay. So this is one of
That's a
the
good
things
one.
that you don't want to have it too hot, but like a
Yeah.
medium low heat. Let it heat up for a couple minutes and then take some, just dip your fingers in water, splash it on. And if it beads up but dances around the pan, then that's like the prime spot. That's
Good to
what you
go.
want. That's where you know it's like, okay, it's ready to cook on. And now you can go proceed as usual.
Yeah.
So there's little stuff and tips and tricks of things like this where it goes, oh, okay, that makes sense to me. And now you can make it work a lot more than if when I didn't know that and I'm just cooking the same way in stainless steel. Like, why is everything sticking to this so
Yeah.
badly? I missed the non-stick and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
It's actually pretty non-sticky with stainless
Yeah,
steel.
they're pretty good,
Do it that
right?
way.
Like I'm pretty happy with them. I'm
Yeah,
like, this is good.
right. Same is true all throughout the house. Is the one thing I love about Jeanette, as much as she is the neat freak, and when COVID came around, she was like, everybody's cleaning up and wearing masks on planes. Like I've been doing that for years because people are funky. you know,
Yeah.
she was like, finally, the world's caught up to this level of sanitization.
Yeah.
She's always been like the neat and clean, freaky person. And to her credit, in going down this toxicity journey, she's like, I could go crazy with this, but 80-20. Let's just clean up like 80%. And yeah, we 20%, we can have a
Yeah.
little flexibility. And I love that because I'm so much so like I don't want to be so inconvenienced to try to peak optimize my life like a Brian Johnson live forever, don't die type. It's like
Yeah.
I want to do a pretty decent job and do my part in most of these areas. But if it takes so much time and effort and
Yeah.
energy to do that, and the spread is questionable, we don't know for sure how impactful it is. It's like, I don't really want to
Yeah.
waste my time and energy on that. Right. So to her
Yeah.
credit, she's like, yeah, 80-20. We'll just get rid of the really bad stuff, cookware that's plastic, the non-stick material cookware and all these things. Same thing in the toxicity in
Yeah.
our household. It's the same thing, and part of it was driven by a Diary of a CEO podcast on that, but she was also diving into this before that podcast even
Cool.
popped up. That's why she was locked in when it did pop up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Already down that trail. But where you stand now, what is, and like you already mentioned, for the kids, right? A lot of it's for the kids. You haven't felt a direct impact where you say, yeah, I feel this effect. But what are the main things besides cookware? What are the other things you're finding yourself, and deodorant you mentioned, no aerosols? What are the other things that you're like, toxicity, man? This is where I need to, I'm paying attention to this and swapping this out or whatever it may be.
Two things that come to mind. One is the air not pollution, but the air quality in the house.
Mm-hmm.
So, keeping doors and windows open as much as possible, getting the air flow through, plants in the house. And then the other thing, and this has been a thing before I listened to that toxicity podcast and kind of delved into it, is the furniture in our house. So like when we first, before we bought a house, I had actually seen I think it was an episode of Grand Designs, and this woman, they were building this house. It was all fully eco house, but they really delved into the furniture that this woman was buying, or sourcing, and it was unique because it was all used furniture. It was none of it was new, and the reason was because their kid had massive allergies, like crazy allergies. So, and what happens with new furniture is when it basically comes from the factory, all the toxins get released. Yeah, and so they get, and especially, I don't want to name any names, but the cheaper furniture companies that are really cheap and they just, bulk produce, they use cheaper glues. Generally, they don't use solid woods. So there's a lot of toxins in that. And I kind of got that from that episode, and it was always stuck in my mind. And so I said to Nelly, when we were buying the furniture for our first home, I was like, I would prefer to spend a lot more money and buy solid wood, and leather or materials that, or from manufacturers that I know are using better sourced products and not mass producing, and then we just keep the furniture for longer.
Hmm.
Because the longer you have it, and this is why she was sourcing used products, the longer you have it, the more the toxins have gone out of the product. So, but every time you buy something new, every time you buy a new piece of furniture, you're introducing more toxins back into that environment.
Yeah.
So, I was like, I would prefer to buy like really nice furniture that we love, that we know is like a solid wood or something like that, that we will keep for a long time. Yes, we're going to invest a lot of money in it to start with, but at least we know. And I think coming back to that placebo effect, like you don't know, like you don't get that um, you know, instant reaction of like, oh my God, I feel so much better because my furniture is not toxic. Like you don't know.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like that placebo thing where you're like, well, at least I know the majority of my furniture, my cookware, the air in my house is good. And that makes you feel good. So I think that's it for me, really.
Yeah.
Because none of this, like I said before, none of this has had affected my health previously. Whereas this woman on that podcast had said she couldn't get pregnant because of the product she was using was affecting
Yeah.
her ability to have a period and then obviously not be able to have a kid. And then after going through that process, it completely switched and she was able to have kids. So for me, it was not like that. I just would rather, if we can easily, like you said, without a lot of barrier to entry and,
Mhm.
affecting your lifestyle, change a few things up, then, I'm all for it. Yeah.
Have you had the experience with this nice, beautiful, well thought out, expensive furniture where your toddler has destroyed it yet?
No.
All right. Well, I'm hoping
No,
we're
no, not yet. Not yet. Oh man, I'm gonna yeah. We've
uh
got this like my pride and joy right now is this like leather swivel armchair. I freaking love that thing. And I'm like every time, my son's like family friends come over with their kids, they get on it and they spin it around and they just do this. And I'm sitting there like, oh, come on.
uh
So we're not at that stage yet, but I'm sure it's gonna happen.
yeah, I
I'm
hope
sure.
not. I hope not for your sake. I hope not for sure. Um,
But I just gotta accept, that's it's character. It
yes.
adds character.
This is what we did with our whole dining room set. Everything was brand new. We bought for the dining table, we just bought a butcher block and then I
Yeah.
I just worked it over, routed it, cut it around, all this stuff, and then mounted it to set of table legs. And then we sourced like specifically the bench and three chairs, swivel chairs, all this stuff that we love.
Yep. Yep.
And when it was all set up, I go to Jeanette, enjoy it for the next couple of days because this is this is not gonna last, with 3-year-old here and a baby as well. This is not gonna last unless you wrap it in
Yeah.
plastic.
I mean, we are pretty good with pens and textures. Like, I don't leave anything
Yeah,
laying around.
smart.
Um, He's not too bad, to be honest, for now.
Yeah,
It's funny because Jeanette actually, she messaged me she replied to one of my stories on Instagram
yeah.
and I posted in the living room. And she's like, how the hell is your room not covered in toys and crap everywhere? And I'm like, I have hiding places for everything.
Yeah. That's smart, man. That's expert move for sure. For sure.
Yeah. And the other thing, this is a little hack. Um, I said to, was it her? I think I said to, yeah, I said to her, we rotate toys
Yes.
because they get given so many toys.
Yep.
at birthdays, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So we literally just have a few he plays with, and
Yep.
then we'll like pack everything else away. And then next month we'll just like rotate. And he's like,
Yeah.
oh, a new toy. Because he doesn't play with all the other, they just sit around.
Yeah.
So
That's true.
that's my little hack.
That's a great hack. We also, Jeanette handles the rotation of toys as well. The one thing I should add to my skylight calendar review is that when those photos of toys that are rotated out at the moment pop
Oh
up,
yeah.
the toddler is
Don't
going
let
to
him
point
go.
that out
Yeah.
immediately and be like,
Yeah, yeah,
"Oh,
yeah.
I
Where is
want that
that?
toy back." And you're like,
Yeah, yeah.
so be
Quickly, rotate in, rotate out.
tag him in. All right. I wanted to get to, I'm just going to ask this question. I wanted to kind of peel it back, but I think we should sort of wrap this up soon because this has all been, it's been so damn good and I want to keep it that way. But one of the questions that I had that I wanted to really dive into here is what you feel, because you've spent a good amount of time in the US, but you're Australian and you've been around the world as well and pretty well traveled. What do you feel culturally Aussies have an advantage over Americans? So this could be specific to business and your ability to, deal with entrepreneurship and things like that. It could be family. It could just be general life, right? Like everybody thinks, oh, Americans, you're so overly confident and you're loud and you're this and you're that, like whatever it is. But culturally, what advantages do you feel Aussies have that it's just built into the Aussie culture where you're like, this is kind of an unfair advantage that we have over Americans or over the rest of the world, let's say?
Oh, that's a good one. I think um probably the biggest thing that comes to mind is that we're young. Like we're quite a young country in comparison to America or China. And so with that, there's not a lot of like this ingrained, entrenched, like this is it. It has to stay like this. So like I don't want to open a can of worms, but the whole gun law and the way that like it's your right to bear arms, yes, okay. But does that work for today? And is that working for you guys?
Right.
Like, whereas like we're so young that I guess we haven't gone through a lot of that. So, and maybe that means we can pivot easier and see what's working and not working in other countries. But in saying that, like I do feel like we are following in the footsteps of the US. So like I think with time, we could be going through the same things.
Mm-hmm.
But who knows? Other as well as that, I think because I mean, I know Perth in particular is quite isolated, very isolated. We have a big travel culture in Australia. So
Mm-hmm.
we're blessed enough to be able to afford to do that. I think that's another big thing. Like we're so lucky here in this country. But we have big travel culture, so we do experience a lot of the world, other cultures, other countries, and so our education is also life education.
Mm-hmm.
Other, not just the books we read or what we're taught at school. We're going out there, we're experiencing it.
Yeah.
That's my experience, but I know a lot of friends and family that have also all done the same thing. So,
Right. Yeah.
we're experiencing it for ourselves. And I think that is a big eye opener and definitely something I want to do for our kids is
Mm-hmm.
just, and I know you're the same,
Yep.
is like literally just go everywhere, explore every corner of the earth. Um, and that in itself is such a good education for
Mm-hmm.
them. I recall there was um, a, a a woman from Nellie's work, and I think they had adopted a girl from India, and the girl hadn't been there for a long time, and so she was really playing up, and it was just really tough for the parents, and they said, you know what, we're gonna go back to India for a few weeks where you're from so you can see what it's like and experience it. She went back and then she came back
Yeah.
and was a completely different person. She's like, I I cannot believe how lucky I am to live in this country and have you as parents. And so that changed her whole perspective because she was able to go to
Yeah.
these other countries.
Yeah.
You know, that was one thing that blew my mind about the US is like you're such an opulent country. Um, and don't get me wrong, there's so many places to see in the US. I mean, it's
Mhm.
so diverse and an amazing place. So I can see why you would just want to travel there. But like so many people when I had gone, I mean, it might have changed now, but
Mhm.
back in 2012, it was like no one had left America. I'm like, what are
Yeah.
you talking about? Like, dude, get out of here. Like, go to Europe, go to
No,
South America.
it's still the same. It's still the same where I think at that time I remember because I was just ramping up with traveling for me. So I was looking into all the statistics and where should I go and all this stuff. And at that time, I think it was somewhere around only 1/4 or maybe 1/3 of Americans even owned a passport at that time, let alone that's not saying
Oh,
that they've actually used it and traveled to another country. That's just I have the ability to because I have a passport. It was only like 1/3 of this nation. And I highly doubt that that number is too far different present day. But I can
why do you
speak
think that is?
I would guess part of it, I think, to your point, America is so diverse in landscape, in culture, across,
Yeah.
I mean, even within, like in Texas, for example, you can drive for 10 hours at 75, 80 miles per hour. You can drive for 10 hours straight in a straight line, and you can still be in Texas.
Yeah.
You do that anywhere in Europe and you're pretty much across 10 different countries. You're all the way across Europe, sort of deal, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and that's just Texas. That's one of 50 states in the US, right? So, I think part of it is there is such a diverse landscape. You can go and see incredible single mountain peaks, right? Where I'm at up here in the Northwest, there's a few mountains that are they're wonderful mountains. Mount Rainier, Mount Hood, Mount Baker, Mount St. Helens, all of these like amazing mountains. And then you have mountain ranges like the Colorado Rockies, and you have desert, and you have literally every ecosystem. I think
Yeah.
aside from tropical rainforest, we have rainforests, but not tropical rainforest in the US. So, well, I guess that's debatable. Maybe somebody will fact check me on this. Maybe Hawaii counts, but I think because there's so many different things you can experience in that way from landscape, but also culture of the people. Like we were talking about earlier, you like drop your R's, and I'm like, yeah, that's kind of Boston too, like New England, or
Yeah.
you get down south and you start getting a little guttural, or, there's so many different dialects of language spoken as well. So you get a wild array of different cultures to where it
Yeah.
feels like it is satisfying that need to travel the world and experience different cultures. But the reality
Yeah.
is, and I thought so too until my first time out of the US, I was 20 years old. I went solo, I went to Japan, and it was wild. I
Yeah.
had never experienced, even though I had seen plenty of things, international, whatever, on TV and clips or wherever, I had never experienced life. When I went to Japan, it felt like I entered a parallel universe, not just because they're driving on the opposite side of the road, but literally everything is operating differently, but it's working seamlessly. The,
Perfectly.
the
Yeah.
way it does here, right? Where you go, oh,
Yeah.
well, I guess if you just drive on the other side of the road, then yeah, that kind of makes sense that it would work. But no, literally the way they do everything is different from here.
Yeah.
And it all works just fine. And that was the first eye-opening moment to me to go, whoa, there are different ways for an entire society to operate, not just do one thing differently. An entire way of life is totally different. And I go, that's pretty wild to me to see that and experience it, where it just makes you question, why do we do things the way we do and which one of these is better? And this is just
Mm.
two of all of the different nations in the world. There's got to be different countries that do this category way better than we do. So what if I
Oh, yeah.
started to parse and just pick apart the best of the best to try to form my own kind of
Yeah.
being, my own existence? And so that's literally how I raise the kids as well. Is basically I created a list of virtues where it's like, this is how we're going to raise the kids, and this is how we're going to create our family and build the bond of who our family is, what our family's like, what we do, what we don't do. And when I explain things to these kids, when they have questions about how come Johnny over here is doing this, and I can explain some families do things that way, our family does not do things that way. A lot of these virtues for me came about from the different experiences around different countries around the world and picking the best of the best things. This is true for different nations and how they are culturally. This is true for different religions and how they are. I just would never have had that experience if I didn't leave the United States.
Yeah, that's right. 100%. I remember we were in China when I went to China for one of the work trips. I went to one of the colleagues was like, my husband wants you to come have dinner with us at his house. He lives with his dad. Would you like to do that? I'm like, yep, let's do it. So we went to their neighborhood, older neighborhood, lots of apartments. And he's like, do you want to get some beer for dinner? I was like, yeah, cool. We go to this um, this cart, this like stand on the side of the road, and he's like, I'll get some beer, blah, blah, blah. They got a plastic bag and just filled it up with beer, tied a knot, and we're just walking down the street with a bag full of beer. I'm like, what is this place? Like, no cans or bottles or anything, just a plastic bag filled with beer.
Perfect.
And we get to his apartment, or his dad's apartment, and it's almost no bigger than this room. It's one bedroom, one bathroom. The kitchen and living area is tiny, and then he slept in like a bed on sort of like the balcony that was kind of like closed in.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, this is nuts. Like, it was smaller than like a small New York apartment,
Yeah.
like those crappy one
Yeah.
bedroomers. And like, it was so basic, and we were sitting on these little stools having dinner. So, so simple.
Yeah.
And they were just super happy. And I was like, man, this is just crazy. We are so spoiled and we were
Yes.
so lucky.
Yep.
And if you don't travel, you don't see that and you don't appreciate what you have. And also the way that other cultures do it,
Yeah.
and that's the beauty of it's like experiencing, like you said, going to Japan, and it's a whole nother world because it is.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
insane.
I love that you got a bag of beer.
Yeah. It was damn good beer.
That's so good, man. But
yeah.
it's like, oh, that is weird, right? People think like that is weird. But in reality, do you know anybody that drinks wine out of a box or has that's a bag of wine that they just put in a box to make it easy to transport, it's the same thing. It's just prettied up a little bit different, in the Western world and stuff. But it's like, who cares what the container is? Just drink it,
Just drink it.
I mean, obviously we're talking toxicity and stuff. Like maybe we should go with
I mean, you're pouring it into a glass cup, so you're over.
Do you have a stainless steel bag I can transport my bag of beer in? When I went to Japan, to your point, it's not enough to just see it and hear about it or read about it or anything like that. When I went to Japan, I was staying mostly in Misawa, up like north of Tokyo. Took a train down. This was 4th of July weekend. And I am pumped for the fireworks show because we're staying at a hotel. I'm like, we can get up on the rooftop somewhere down there and watch these fireworks, right? Because it's 4th of July. Independence Day, it's 4th of July. And I'm like, we go up on the legitimately never clicked. Get up there. I'm like, where are all the fireworks? It's like, well, you're in Japan. Their Independence Day is not 4th of July. They don't celebrate this. Just all these different things. And I'm like, what an idiot I am, to never even had that cross my mind. And the feeling of I still have this photo of me standing in the doorway. The doorway to my hotel room came to here. I had to duck to enter. It was like Hobbit Town. My arms could literally touch both walls at the same time across. It's like super tiny. And I never would have that same visceral, lasting impression experience that I can just recall at any meditative moment I want to if I just read about it. And
Yeah, yeah.
so, yeah, I think that is one of the core things. Everywhere I've traveled in the world, I've been to many different countries. Everywhere I've traveled, there's always Aussies. So I think you're onto something that one of the key legs up that you have as a nation, as a people, is that you guys travel so much. You get to experience and you choose to experience so much of the world that
Yeah.
Americans just don't get that or take advantage of that experience in the same way. And so I think that is a very valid point, which also in the business world, that lends you to the ability to connect with the end consumer better.
Yeah, 100%.
And
100%.
yeah, that's oof.
I think we're lucky. Yeah, we're very lucky both in the States and in Australia,
Yeah.
to be able to, most of us anyway, be able to afford to do that.
Yeah.
Um, the problem I find is that because we have so much and we have this ability to make a lot of money, um, there's always that keeping up with the Joneses and no pun intended. Um,
Danny boy.
and like it's so easy to go, oh man, they're driving this new Range Rover or whatever it might be. I want to get a new car.
Mm-hmm.
And then so you've just gone foregone a trip to, a country that could have changed your life in some way, or just
Mm-hmm.
been way more, what's the word? Um, just valuable because, like anyone, you buy something for 5 minutes, you're like, yeah, this is cool. And then 5 minutes later, you're like, meh.
Mm-hmm.
That's that whole dopamine thing,
Yeah.
right? Like you get that hit of dopamine because you got this fancy new car and then it's gone. But like when you travel, it's just like this forever thing. Like that
Mm-hmm.
that memory is imprinted in your mind. Those learnings, those things that are just there forever.
Yeah.
Um, it's just so much more valuable, you
It's
know.
like it's like when you just go, I'm gonna just travel to another country and cruise around with my mate for his wedding weekend, and then he gets pulled over, and
Yes,
he can't drive his own
and you
vehicle
have to
anymore,
drive on the other side of the road.
and then you have to try your best for very little to no experience to drive on the opposite side of the road and act as if it's normal when you don't even have an international driver's license.
You did well. You did very well. I cannot believe the cop would prefer you to drive than me.
Baffling,
That was just another.
baffling. That
Yeah,
was
I'm
an
still hearing
excuse,
about
man.
that, by the way. I'm
Are
still
you?
hearing about that from Nelly. She's like, that $450 fine could have gone towards our limo. Yeah, you got me. You got
Yeah,
me.
that man, wonderful times. All right, Danny boy, give us
Yeah.
before we wrap, I want to give you a chance to first of all, you're gonna have a moment to tell people, direct people where they can find you to keep up with you, to follow you, to support you, whatever that looks like. But then I also want to capture your kind of message to the world as it is in this chapter of your life, what you wish the whole world or just your nation or just one individual you want to speak to out there, whatever message that is, that you're like, man, if you can capture this and understand it to a certain level, it's just going to absolutely skyrocket the level of enjoyment that you have from this life. So
Yeah.
think of that. But first, tell people where they can find you and support you and what is the best way to do that.
Oh, I need to, I didn't even know my Instagram handle. I'm not on it enough. All right.
Mm-hmm.
My Instagram, if you want to follow me and my story, is Dan Jones dot full stop underscore underscore. You'll probably find me around the traps of Goat, which is our business, and that is at the Goat Co underscore. Or the website is thegoatco.au. So you'll find me around the traps. I'm very forward facing with this brand, which is another thing for those of you who are starting a new brand, if it's a personal business or any business really. I think the founder led Content is the way to go. So definitely get in front of the camera as much as you can. Even if you hate it, just start somewhere because people want to connect.
To add to that, I don't mean to cut you off here, but I do want to add to it because there are some people who are still gonna put it off, put it off, put it off. So let me give you a kind of loophole from somebody who's made a career from being in front of the camera for over a decade. If the thing that's stopping you is feeling fear about getting in front of a camera, speaking to it like this, and all the technology that it takes and all that stuff, a good way around this to get you started, to get you off of that starting block, is you can just film things. You could set up a tripod, film your process, whatever that is, and then do a voiceover later, which you can literally type up a script. You can use Chat GPT to help you create a good script for whatever it is that you filmed, and then you can literally just with a microphone with your phone, you can record a voiceover, literally just reading the script word for word for word, and you go, oh, that wasn't good, let me do another take. And then you don't have the pressure of having to perform in front of the camera live, so to speak, in that recording. So just get started that way if it's too intimidating to get in front of camera. And ultimately, hopefully you can get in front of camera and just be able to take it on, and when you mess up, take it in the chin and just keep going, whatever it looks like. But hopefully you'll eventually get there. This is a good step if you don't like that kind of modality of jumping straight into it. Just film, take pictures, do whatever, and then add the voiceover later.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think the more you do it, the better you get. Like I used to be absolutely trash in front of the camera. I'm really good at writing, but I'm not the greatest at speaking. So and I'm still learning and getting better as I go, obviously, but the more you do it, the better you get. But I think to that point, also people can really connect with the authenticity of someone that isn't great in front of the camera, that's just fumbling their way through it, because we're all generally like that. So even if it is quote unquote shit, just put it out there and just improve and get better as you go. But in terms of like something I can give like my thoughts on enhancing your life, try this is really hard for me especially, but like for most of us, is get away from digital stuff, consuming, and just spend, time with the family, time outside. Like I'm really trying to find like balance where I'm just cutting off, like, okay, done with this. Now it's family time. Phone goes away. I'm not watching TV or whatever. I'm getting outside. Just find boundaries, because you just get consumed, and you find yourself at the dinner table, both of you just looking at your phones, and it's like, what are we doing here? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, like for me, like I'm trying to limit, my use of, digital products, get outside, make sure I'm training every day. I think movement is like, it's medicine. I think, I'm not, no longer making that like a secondary thing. Like that's kind of number one, because if I'm not moving and I'm not training and feeling good, then I bring that home, to the family, and then I'm just moody and just not happy, and then not feeling physically good either. So I think, get outside, get some sun on you.
I love it. I love it. Daniel Jones, my man, brother from another mother. Thank you so much for the time, for the wisdom, for the laughs. And
I hope it was entertaining for some part.
You know what? It entertained me. I had a great time, and hopefully for yourself too. If anybody else benefits, great. If they don't, whatever. Not for you. Move on to the next one. Go outside, get some sunshine.
Get some sun.